You've heard of that woman from Michigan, right? No, not that one. But first, if you stuck around past that first tidbit, in 1871, a book called The Descent of Man was published by a guy called Charles Darwin. It was revolutionary and blew off the doors of contemporary beliefs on how human beings came to be. He's the evolution guy. But that does not mean he inherently got everything right. And this woman from Michigan decided to prove it. Eliza Burt Gamble was born in 1841 in Concord, Michigan. There's not a whole lot known about her early life, but what we do know. Her dad passed away when she was only 2 years old, and then when she was 16, she lost her mom. Well, those 14 years of growing up with a widowed mother trying to make ends meet lent to her independence and probably ensured her feminism. But she was progressive and firmly believed in human rights and individual liberties. To support herself, she took a job as a teacher, eventually becoming the superintendent of the East Saginaw School District. As an aside here, evidence seems to say she didn't receive a higher education, like college. Well, outside her self-education. But her writing showed, quote, comparative quality to her academic contemporaries. In January of 1865, she married James Gamble. He was a lawyer with a degree from U of M. Together, they had 3 children, 2 of whom survived childhood. Eventually, the family landed in Detroit. Eliza, like most other women in the country, wanted a say in the policies affecting them. Her husband, at the very least, did not get in her way. She became deeply involved with the women's movement, demanding equality, including the right to vote. The whole process was easy, right? Oh, yeah, totally. Totally. Back in 1876, Eliza helped organize the very first women's suffrage conference in Michigan. She considered suffrage imperative, but she didn't think that was enough. Darwin's book didn't exactly encourage men to agree with her. Instead, it gave them scientific proof that women were inferior based on his observations of wild animals. Okay, in a very, very brief nutshell, Darwin claimed that women were naturally inferior. It was biology, after all. And men ate that shit up. But they ended up with indigestion. Because in 1893, she used his research to prove him wrong, and to further prove that it is actually men who are inferior. I feel like a fucking doll would fit here, but that might hurt some people's feelings. So anyway, she went to DC. Multiple sources, kids, don't just rely on one. And spent an intense year at the Library of Congress, digging through the archives, finding strong women throughout history, pulling evidence to further prove just how wrong he got it. Her research culminated in the 1894 publication of the book she's probably best known for, The Evolution of Woman. Well, dudes did not like that. How could a woman use facts like that? I mean, holy shitballs, right? Anyway, Eliza argued that women's inferiority was in fact unnatural and artificially imposed. Women only appear inferior because men. And Darwin failed to notice human qualities in women. So in case you haven't figured it out, I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Charles Darwin was a fucking misogynist. He fully supported the Victorian belief that the peener was the be-all to end-all. But she called out the flaws in his argument, like his repeated self-contradiction, and that his observations were not objective. For example, he claimed that gorillas could never become higher social creatures like humans because they were too big and strong. But then he said that men are superior because they're so big and strong. What? Yeah, okay. She refuted. The peacock might have bigger feathers, but the peahen still had to exercise her facilities to choose a mate. The best mate. I'm never going to get through all of her research either, so, in brief, she paved the way for social justice and discourse on sexual inequality. So how about some reasons why she said women were superior? Well, excluding grape. Wish the fuck I didn't have to say that. It's because we have the capacity of choice to choose the best mates. We can weed out the bad and fuck the good, so to speak. And choosing more favorable characteristics makes future generations stronger and live longer. According to dudes, well, that choice was actually passive. She was being coy. So they heard, try harder. Because no actually means yes, right? No, it doesn't. It never means anything but no. She further explained that patriarchy took hold when men decided they were entitled to women's bodies, then took economic and social power away from them, forcing them to be dependent on men. She argued that things like the conscience are a direct result of women's maternal and altruistic tendencies. Higher faculties are transmitted solely through women. That's being able to think outside the box, kids. And that women should be permitted to work in pediatrics while completely excluding men, because women are better nurturers, more capable of dealing with children. In her 1910 article, Child Life Study is a Woman's Duty, she addressed the alarming child mortality rates and blamed men pediatricians, while she later conceded that it was actually the institutions which failed to teach them. Like, literally, most medical schools didn't require more than 75 hours of pediatric study. Some of them didn't even address infants. Of course, whenever you write something publicly, it comes with critiques. A lot of what she got was positive. The Detroit Free Press said that her book was thoughtful, with a scholarly approach and perfect fairness. The criticism usually came from men. She was so controversial because she was saying the quiet part out loud and going against nearly every Victorian social norm. Of course, let's suffice to say, critics wanted her, and any woman who supported her ideas, to sit down and shut the fuck up, get on her back and fuck. And then after his final grunt, celebrate making him a fucking sandwich. Yeah, no. Eliza went on to publish 2 more books on women's empowerment and feminism. In The God Idea of the Ancients, she declared that no fact is plainer than that women's most formidable foe has been and still is the church. Religion was a tool for controlling women and their bodies. Do I really need another fucking duh here? I can put one in if you want. According to author Kimberly Hamlin, Eliza's work gave women, finally, a means of saying, maybe the Garden of Eden didn't happen. Woman is not a spare rib. She is the source of all life. Eliza wrote several articles for the Detroit Free Press and for feminist publications. Her writing was, quote, eloquent, and used knowledge and resources from several disciplines. One of her greatest passions, though, was education. In 1896, she was elected the president of the Detroit Educational Union. They wanted equal education and encouraged women to become more involved so their daughters would be independent. She never stopped fighting the good fight. Eliza Burt Gamble passed away in 1920 in Detroit, just 1 month after women got the vote. I found no proof that she got to cast a ballot. Today, you could visit her grave at Woodlawn Cemetery in Detroit. Alas, it would be irresponsible to stop there, because she could be considered problematic. So first off, her involvement in suffrage. That was based largely in the northeast part of the United States, and run by white women, who decided to exclude women of color when southern states bitched about their ties to abolition. I didn't find evidence that she was directly exclusionary, but I also found no evidence that she actively tried to fight it. A second way she's problematic, she used Darwin's own research and agreed that most of women's power comes from motherhood, completely neglecting all the other ways that women are powerful. She is criticized for using only his science, without her own experimentation, despite that she probably didn't have access to such a thing. Woman and all. A third issue, one word came up repeatedly during my research: eugenics. Eugenics is a term for controlled selective breeding, selecting the best, excluding the worst. We hear certain people saying it will keep from poisoning the bloodline. Schmatzi's used it. The US has used it not a long time ago. And if you use a very strict definition of the word, with no nuance, then yeah, letting women choose a mate becomes synonymous with eugenics, which in my opinion is a false correlation, used to discourage women's empowerment and control over their own bodies. Eliza's works used religion, science, and history to show that women had been cheated out of the lives that they deserved. You can throw in your own fucking duh. She was progressive, but fell victim to patriarchal beliefs. But her work did prove that insisting that women are no more than a body part is just weird.